Hi, my name is Gil Robertson, president of the African American Film Critics Association. Today, we're thrilled to be talking to creative Daniel Lawrence, responsible for the hit 100% Rotten Tomatoes Tubi series, Borders. We're going to kick things off by introducing you to the AAFCA members who are on the call today, starting with Carolyn Hines in Toronto, Canada, Kim Singleton in New York, Jill Monroe in Los Angeles, Dana Abercrombie in New York, DJ Chris Stiles in Cleveland, Ohio, Michael Sewell in Washington, D.C., and of course, Chris Johnson in Raleigh, North Carolina, Mr. Al McGee in South Florida. I'm going to let you guys do what you do so well, and I'll see you on the other side.
We have high standards at St. Gilbert's. We expect every new pupil to uphold them.
And with that in mind, I want you all to make sure that our new students are made to feel right at home.
Let them know you belong.
Is that going to stop them from staring?
If they stare, stare back. Hi, how you doing? Gorgeous weather we're having.
Hi, I'm Mabel.
You guys must be these scholarships.
Is it your first time boarding? If you needed anything, I'm really happy to help.
This place I got be fire.
Hi, I'm Leah. I thought I was the only one.
Only one of what?
This place is mad extra.
We are the Diversity and Inclusion Team. We plan to capture your Black excellence at all times.
There's always drama around the corner in places like these. Have you not watched Get Out?
We're not even here. Crack on.
These posh boys drink vodka like water. You should be proud of yourself, you know. Rose from the concrete.
Don't be who they expect you to be.
It's giving.
It's really giving.
Giving what?
Just giving.
Hi. How you doing? Gorgeous weather we're having, isn't it?
RSVP with Jill Monroe. Hi, Daniel. So I love the setting of the series that it takes place in a boarding school because it's so insular. Can you talk about why you decided to place it there and how that played into the development of the story and the themes you brought out?
Yeah, sure. So the whole premise, the whole show was based on an article that I read, which is about 5 young Black boys who were given scholarships to a private school in Rugby, which is out in the sticks in the UK. And when I read the article, it really resonated with me because it was very similar to my own experience. I didn't go to boarding school or anything like that, but the university I went to, I left South London, which is quite a deprived area, and I went to a university in Surrey, which was very white, very middle class, very otherworldly. And a lot of the things that they spoke about in the article really resonated with me, and so it felt like the perfect place to tell a brilliant fish out of water story, but one that I could connect to. But then in the development of the show, I found I was able to explore types of structural and institutional racism that doesn't only take place in schools, but just takes place across society in general. And so it found like it was a perfect foundation for me to build upon and to kind of look at, even though it's in this institution, it's across all institutions and all businesses and so on and so forth.
Hi, Kim Singleton out of New York City, Consider It Black-Lit podcast and television show. And I absolutely love these series. I'm in love with all the Black students. But one of my favorites is Toby. He is smart. He seems to be well-read. He masters the languages, but he also still has this childhood mischief that is just so adorable. My question is that patterned after anybody you know, or what went into the development of this character?
It's funny, whenever I speak to people, everyone says that they've got a piece of Toby in them. And I think it's, I think we've all had that sense of like, we've all had to like hustle in some way, shape or form. We've all had experiences of like persevering and pushing through no matter what the barriers that come up against you. And so I think there's something about Toby which we all love and resonates with us. It's partly because it's part of us, but we also love the way that he perseveres through everything. And it's something that, being black and white spaces, you want to push through and you want to retain yourself as much as possible. And I think Toby's a great example of that. So I think the reason why it connects with people is A, it's a part of us, and B, it's the part of us that we love. As Black people, we love to persevere, we love to push through.
Thank you. Great job.
Hi, Carolyn Presser. Here's What Happened in Carolyn Talks podcast YouTube channel. Thank you so much for joining us today. So I'm kind of going off of Kim's question about Toby. He's fascinating to me because he's a polyglot, and he is a polyglot in like he not only speaks in like European languages like the German and French, but he also speaks in Mandarin and Japanese. We get to hear him flex a bit in Japanese, and me having taken courses in Japanese, I thought that was interesting. But I want to talk about the use of language overall in the show with regards to the Black characters, because I see them all as polyglots because they have to code switch, not just between like their traditional English, but also the way they speak to each other as young people, the way they have to speak to the young white cast and the older cast, but also between their natural dialects and native languages. Because like, for instance, there's Femi who speaks in Nigerian with his parents, and when he's in distress, he switches automatically to Nigerian to like really, probably Yoruba to really talk about how frustrated he is. But I want to talk about structuring language in this show, because I think it's very interesting that all of Black kids are in a sense polyglots. They know how they've mastered communication with different people in different ways. Like Leah knows how to like really talk to men, but she also knows how to talk to the girls, so talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's like, I think that is, I mean, first of all, talking about Toby and him being a polyglot, I think it's because him coming from London is such a mix of people, and I think it, in some ways, I kind of wanted to reflect that. So in the opening scenes where you see him speaking a bit of Farsi, these are a lot of languages that we do here every day, and so he is just has a natural ability of absorbing a lot of these things, and I say a natural ability, but also he puts in the time and he puts in the work. So I kind of wanted to speak to a lot of that. And then in terms of all the characters, yeah, you're right, as in like we all learn how to code switch. Do you know what I mean? And so, and it's interesting what you say about Leah speaking to the men and speaking to the women. We code switch to survive in different spaces, and I think that's what people really love about the show, and what people warm to the show is watching these characters enter this space, and it is about survival. And how do you survive? It is to code switch, and when you do code switch, there's a slight shadow that kind of comes with that, because you also have to question how much you want to code switch, and do you want to code switch, and how much of yourself will be jeopardized if you code switch. And it's a thing of survival. I know I've had my own personal experiences. I've code switched. I know that I have. My accent is not that of South London. I think me going to a predominantly white university, coming back to where I live, people were like, wow, Daniel, you sound different. And I think it was just something which I transitioned to just to survive in those spaces. And it's benefited me to a great deal. But at the same time, it also begs the question of like, why did I have to in the first place? So I think a lot of these things are things that I wanted to inject into the show, which is so important because it's something that we all have to do.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a particular word, like the name of the group, the Rascals. I'm going to just say Rascals, because if you're from the Caribbean, you know the way they pronounce it is actually a curse word. So I thought that was interesting, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
How you doing, Daniel? I'm Al McGee with YETicket.com. Man, I saw 3 episodes. I'm very excited about it. And it reminded me, at first I thought it was going to remind me of other shows I've seen, but no, this is very original. first of all, the title Borders, what does that exactly mean? And man, your characters, the students, are very good. But also, they use the term, or the white students use the term for the black students, scholarship kids and things like that. And that remind me when I was in graduate school, a few labels that they labeled me. So how'd you come up with that idea? Then again, Borders, what does that really mean?
So the title, I kind of wanted I actually have to give a shout out to my wife, because my wife actually came up with the title. But I think it just, when she pitched it to me, basically I was putting together the document and I had a working title and we were going to submit it, and it was like, I got to come up with a title, and she just said Borders. And I loved it because it does everything. It's not only the fact that they are literally in a boarding school and they are borders, but also it is breaking down borders and how divided they are with this other world. So I think it worked in so many levels. And in terms of sorry, your second question was your second question?
Being called scholarship kids and things like that.
Yeah, so I suppose it comes down to, it's just a slight like microaggression, and it's just it's a way of people using power and authority, and that's what they do. And you know, some of them say it in a very derogatory way, some of them just say it in a light, polite, fun way, but we all know, we've all been in those places where people will say things to you to really mark you out. What's funny is one of the characters calls Jaheim Brixton all the time, and that was from a very personal experience where someone was shouting Brixton at me, and it's because they just assumed, you know, Brixton was a predominantly black area at the time, and so it was just something that they used to kind of like, it was a power play, and it was a microaggression. And I think this is what happens in a lot of these institutions. People will kind of like pick on little things about you in order to make you feel different. But I think by the end of the series, I think in some ways they even wear it with pride, which is lovely.
Yeah, I caught on to that because when I was in the graduate school, you know, we have affirmative action here in the United States, and a lot of the white students will refer to black students as you got here because of affirmative action and things like that. And that's what the term scholarship reminded me of. And you really hit it on the nail. I want to thank you very much. And thanks for answering my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Chris Dowles from Cleveland, Ohio, WOVU 95.9 FM. Watched the whole series. It's a great series. One character that stood out to me was Jaheim. Because I see a lot of kids that's like that now, battling between where you're coming from and having that knowledge and that smartness to be in a prestigious school. Tell me about the development of that character, because we see that character everywhere. No matter where you go in the world, it is that type of student or that type of kid. When we talk about African-American kids, that's like that, battling between the streets and battling between getting this education and being on the right path.
I mean, I suppose it's weird to say it. It's lovely that it resonates with everyone, because he is such a challenging character and so on and so forth. But it's lovely to hear, because I think because every country in the world, you know, the African diaspora, like wherever we are in the world, I think we all experience that type of otherness, a type of poverty, and it speaks to Jaheim, but like all the characters in some way, shape, or forms, it's when you are up against certain struggles, we all deal with it in different ways, and we do have a lot of Jaheims, because sometimes you do rebel against it. And when I say rebel against it, it sounds like such a negative word. It's not so much that, it's just that you're pushing out, or you're lashing out because the world is treating you in a certain way. And I think that's why Jaheim resonates so much with people, because we've all had to do it. I think the thing about Jaheim is that he goes to extreme lengths, but a lot of his actions are justified. And when I say justified, I don't necessarily mean that they're fair or if they're right or wrong, but within him and his background and where he's come from, it was a survival technique. And I think this is, apologies because I'm waffling quite a lot, but I'm hoping that you'll find something what I'm trying to say. But I think it's the fact that Jaheim is all of us in some way, shape, or form. Is that whenever we kind of step into white spaces, is that sometimes you're desperate to keep parts of yourself, but at the same time, you do have to. It's a struggle to conform, because are you going to be losing a bit of yourself? And Jaheim is just that side of us who doesn't want to, and that we see the consequences of that. But that doesn't mean that he's right or wrong, because then we see characters like Femi who do try to conform, but with that brings its own problems as well. So what's interesting about Jaheim is that the way he sits within all those 5 characters, they all enter that space in a different way, but Jaheim is the most recognizable one, because like you say, I think he's just recognizable across the world. I hope that answered you. That was a bit waffly, so I do apologize, but I'm hoping you got something out of that.
Yeah, you got you. Appreciate you. Thank you. Great series.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, Dana Abercrombie, The Coalition. Again, I'm fascinated by Jaheim as well, and this is a question kind of based on Jaheim. I was wondering, when creating this character, there is that incident with the bathroom, the before the incident and the after. When writing and developing this, did you want to construct a different Jaheim as opposed to what we saw right before that incident and after, in terms of that can change someone immensely?
I mean, yeah, I mean, it was something that we spoke about a lot in the writers' room, because it is such a hideous attack, and it's heartbreaking to a certain degree. And so we really struggled, and even hearing the responses from people, because a lot of people were like, I'm definitely getting kicked out. You know, if anything ever happened like that to me, I'm definitely getting kicked out. And so it was a real balancing act to stay true to Jaheim, but also to put him in a situation in which he just responds a little bit different to it. And even though, you know, not to ruin it, but you know, when you watch the series, he does act in a certain way, but I think he also learns a lot from it. And you got to remember that he's 16 at the same time as well. So even though he's not learning as quickly as you wish that he would, he is. And I think it was, to answer your question, it was a tricky, delicate thing to construct, but I feel we got there in the end. And I think it was a true representation of the Jaheim, how the Jaheim that I wanted should respond to a situation like that.
Michael Sowell from Washington, D.C. I just recently graduated college, and I didn't have the privilege going to HBCU. I'm seeing a lot of people that look like me. Coming to here in the States, can you talk about how this show can actually display aspect of Black students going to a predominantly white institution and operating that, and also having the camaraderie of friendship when we see one of us and have actually go through the hard times that we go through every day on college campuses?
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard one. I mean, in some ways, I in the show, I try not to give answers to anything. I think I kind of give like five distinct ways in which these characters enter this space, and I think in some ways, none of them are right and none of them are wrong. And I think it's because that is life. Do you know what I mean? When we enter these spaces, there's no right or wrong answers. I think what I'm hoping that the show will do is for a younger generation to kind of go is that there is no right or wrong answers, and that there will be, you know, there's the show itself is very, very hopeful towards the end, and they do find a home, but it's a home that is tricky. But I feel like that is life in general, and not to speak of your experience, but I can imagine an African-American experience is that America is your home, but it's a tricky home to be in, because being, for example, a Black man walking down the street and a police officer with a gun, like every day your life is at risk. So even though it's your home, there's struggles that come with it. And I think it's the same with these 5 characters. They find a home and they find a place, but it's not smooth sailing. And I think I just wanted to show is that there are no right or wrong answers. Even, you know, Femi gets a lot of slack because of the things he does, but it's the way he survives. That's not me trying to justify it. I'm just saying that's how he survives. But it's the same with Jaheim. That's how Jaheim survives. And so I think I kind of wanted that for a younger audience to kind of see, is that we all enter this space differently, and at the end of the day, it's down to you and how you can survive in those spaces. And it does come at a cost. I know it from a personal experience, as in like probably why I see a therapist now. But like when I walked into those white spaces, and now when where I'm in my life now, there's a lot of things where I wish I was a bit more Jaheim in certain situations. But then I also know friends who were in that same space as I was that wish that they were less Jaheim. So I hope it just shows the people is that there's no right or wrong answers, but I also hope that these five characters, you can see them pushing and they persevere. And even though a system which is bigger and greater than them and older than them, they still push through and they still persevere. And in that sense, I think it's a really hopeful story, because I feel like that's what we as Black people have to do on a daily basis.
Hi, my name is Nancy Green with Film Critique.
Oh.
Hi, and you mentioned Brixton, and that kind of goes into my question. I wanted to know if you could talk a little bit about some of your experiences that inspired the series.
Yeah, sure. I suppose, I mean, it would definitely have to be my experience going to university and then entering this industry into the TV industry in general. And I think the reason why it's impacted me the most is because I remember when I was younger, there was types of racism that I experienced, but it was a type of racism which was someone shouting at me down the street or someone shouting at me from the van, which is a type of racism which is horrible, but I can deal with because you're not part of my world. It's fleeting. My body may be in danger, but luckily it's fleeting. Whereas when I got to university and in my industry, it had more of an effect on me because I had to be in these spaces long term, and it was spaces that I wanted to develop in. And it was spaces in which my experiences wasn't being acknowledged by other people, particularly white people. And so those experiences is what I put into this show. You know, there's a few characters in the show where you can kind of go out and out, you're a bad person. But as a general rule, I wanted to show that a lot of those players in the show itself, they are not necessarily, what is institutional racism is that sometimes they don't even realize what they're doing. It's the institution themselves, and it's the institution that is serving them. So why on earth would they change it? And I think those personal experiences in my life, which I definitely felt at university and in my career, even until now, are the things that I wanted to put into it to kind of show it's like racism isn't always active. I'm going to call you a word that you dislike. Racism is you benefiting from a system that doesn't work for me and you being unwilling to change it. So those are the things I wanted to inject into the show. And I think that's what people are really connecting with, because I think especially a lot of non-Black people that I'm speaking to, they're getting a glimpse into our world in which, like I said, it's not just people, you know, you can quite easily go Rupert is the bad guy, but there's a lot of other bad players in that show, which you wouldn't necessarily think was a bad player, but they very much are. And it's because of the institution that they are in. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hi, Jill Monroe again. I want to ask you about one of the side characters and the thought around it, Abby, and sort of being the Black girl that has come from somewhat privilege and is in this world, but is still Black, and what the borders those characters bring out in her. Talk a little bit about, if you could, developing that character and why that experience going that way was important to show as well.
Yeah, I suppose it was, again, I think I wanted different experiences. And for Abby in particular, I think it was because, and I've heard this from quite a few biracial people, is in terms of when you're in a certain space or you grow up in a certain space, your blackness is never a thing, or it's never challenged, or you sometimes don't even it is a thing, but you almost try and suppress it or push it to one side. And again, it's a survival thing. And I think I really wanted I really wanted a character whose blackness was just challenged. And I think doing it through someone like Abby, in which she has been in a space in which her friends probably have, there's a joke in it where her friends have been calling her Meghan Markle for ages, where she could just quite happily just push it off to one side. But in actuality, when these black characters step into this space, it's the first time where she actually has to acknowledge her own blackness. And maybe these comments and these jokes were actually playing a part and were chipping apart. And the fact is that she was the only one there before, so maybe she felt she had to be quiet, whereas now there's someone else, and maybe I can actually say something. Maybe I don't appreciate these. Maybe I shouldn't shy away. So I think Abby was just another character in which I wanted to kind of explore how she operates in these spaces. And for her, it was, she doesn't have as much backstory as the other characters, but if you were to go into it, it would be the fact is that she's never had to acknowledge that side of her before, whereas now it's very much in her face. And if anything, she wants to acknowledge it and she wants to hold people accountable.
Thank you.
Hi, Kim Singleton again. My grandmother always used to tell me, be careful how you move, because we pay, as people of color, we pay for our mistakes. In other words, don't go around doing what your white counterparts do, because you will get punished and they may not. And I think this series highlights this because Rupert, in my opinion, did much worse things than the Black students have done, but he was never punished. Talk about the importance of highlighting that in this series.
Yeah, I mean, so in Britain, race and class are so much more intertwined, and when you are a part of the elite, you are not treated in the same way as everybody else. And I really wanted to put that on screen, is that you are not held accountable and you are not responsible. And we kind of see that across the board. Again, when I talk about all institutions, it's the same with our prime ministers. Like currently we're still having the debate that our last prime minister, probably 4 prime ministers ago, we've had many, Boris Johnson, whilst we were all in lockdown, he was out having a party, and people are out and defending him. And again, it's about accountability, as in, like, it's one rule for everyone else and another rule for us. And I think that is something that is very much in British institutions. So I wanted to kind of show that, in which money is everything and money is power. And yeah, I just really wanted to inject that into the show. And I think it is something that is very, very true of institutions. I think, as a general rule, public schools, when you think of your Etons and stuff like that, they are taught that they are better than everyone else, that they are exempt from most rules like everyone else, and they're taught the act of shamelessness. So they do tend to just wander around society, be freely, acting in ways that no one else does. So I just really wanted to inject that in there. So it was a bit of satire for, like, Britain as a whole.
Great, thank you for shining the light on that.
No worries.
Hey, Daniel, how are you? Chris Johnson, Carib Vision Network. A question for you. Enjoyed the series. As both a writer and a director of Borders, how do you ensure that your vision is translated effectively from script to screen?
Well, I'm not the director, just a creator. I have to give props to Tosha Hilton. She was my director, and she was incredible. But to answer your question, getting it from script to screen, it was a challenge, because I didn't know. Over here in the UK, we've not had a show like this. I think you guys, I love the fact that you guys have said that it feels original and fresh, because you've had shows like Dear White People, or the current Fresh Prince, that is the remake of Fresh Prince, that kind of delve into these things, whereas over here in Britain we've not really had a show like this before. So it was very much a leap of faith, really, to see how it would play out. And I think there was just like a lot of discussions and conversations with my director. I mean, step one was making sure that I had an all-black writers' room. And the reason I wanted that is because a lot of the stuff that takes place in the script, it's hard to always intellectualize oppression. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes it's just a feeling, it's just in your gut. And I really wanted a safe space where we were just like, when you're in a space and this happens, and no one quite knows how to phrase it, but we all know because we have a collective experience. So that was step one, and I kind of injected that into the script. And then the same with my director. She was a wonderful Black woman, but again, it was me and her having conversations, and her telling me her reference points and how we mix these big moments of comedy and these big moments of drama. And not only do we mix these two things, but also a social commentary, which is very dark at times, but is also very, very funny. So it was a challenge, but to answer your question, lots of conversations, lots of discussions, lots of reference points, lots of discussing what our favorite films and TV programs was, how we wanted it to look. So it was a combination of conversations and talks, and all of that stuff.
That's great. Thanks, Daniel.
No worries.
Hi, Daniel. I'm Caroline again. So my question is, I want to talk a bit more about Leah, because she's interesting, because while she may be the second Black girl at the school, she's the only dark-skinned one, because Abby is biracial and she's light-skinned. So there is a certain privilege that comes with that Abby herself holds. Whereas Leah, she's on scholarship, she's a boarder, she's dark-skinned, she's also very outspoken and very critical, and very the first thing that we see her wearing, she has the shirt say basically talking about the gal them like not being shut up, like not being suppressed. So talk about her, because as a dark-skinned, outspoken Black girl, she stands alone. The boys have each other to support, they have each other to like back them up, but she's a girl, she doesn't have anyone who literally looks like her in that space. And she sets herself apart immediately by challenging the painting, where she's the one who points out, do we not see the problem of how we're like placed in front of this painting with the Black servant sitting there like he's one of us. So talk about her and about how this character, even in a show like this, is still set apart from everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, funny enough, Leah was I love Leah because she's someone that resonates a lot with people, but she was a hard person to write. And I think it's because all the things that make Leah make her so wonderful also is what people want to criticize. It's like, why is the one Black dark-skinned girl loud and da-da-da-da? But I think the beauty of Leah is because, for me anyway, for Caribbean culture, it's a very matriarchal society. So when Leah is outspoken, it's like, I just felt like that was true. Do you know what I mean? So even though you could say that she was an angry Black girl, I was like, but there's a truth in that. Do you know what I mean? And it was about not shying away from the fact that there is a trope, but acknowledging the fact is that this is true to the culture, but I'm also going to make sure that she's a fully rounded character, and that she is flawed in which, she is outspoken, and she is the person that stands up and wants to start the ACS, and she's so gung-ho when she has to like fight to get onto this scholarship thing, because it was, as Toby says, it's not our fault that underprivileged Black boys are in at the moment, which is so true. It's like everyone's always talking about Black boys, and she has to kind of be the warrior and kind of push through. But at the same time, I wanted to make sure that she was 3D and that she was flawed, and that, that she is just a teenage girl like everyone else. So whereas she is talking about paintings and stuff like that, when a cute boy walks by, it's very easy to kind of switch because you're a teenage girl with hormones and all. And so I wanted to kind of show that flawed side to her. But as you can see, as the series goes on, I won't ruin it, but you know, she always holds that flame within her. But yeah, she was a difficult character to put together because there was so much weight on her shoulders as the only dark-skinned Black girl. But I think we achieved it, and Jodie Campbell, who plays Leah, played it to perfection because she was able to show that fierce, raw side. She was also able to show that gentle side, yeah, she was just to make her like fully formed. And so I think in the end, I think we got there.
Yeah, I didn't see her as a trope because, like, just coming from the Caribbean, she is Caribbean women. That's like, even as teenagers, that's how we are, you know. Like, if you're like, they kind of take on the matronly role, even in like children around their own age. So like that, she's very true to herself. And I imagine that's how her mother, if you ever get to see meet her mother, or her father, or her grandmother, that's how they're gonna be. So I didn't see her as a trope. I just saw her as like as a reflection of like me. I'm like, she's me. She's like my sister, my cousin, my aunts, you know, like.
And I'm so glad, because I think that's what we were aiming for. And I think, you know, whenever we did get pushback, and it's like, why is she the one who's like telling people to not have fun? And it's like, no, it's not that she's not telling people to have fun. It's that there are consequences to our actions because we are the only Black people here. Yeah. And she is taking on that role. She's not killing anyone's fun. She is just the one who sees the world as it really is. So I'm glad that kind of resonated with you.
Yeah, thank you. No, she's a gal though, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, Daniel. This is Al McGee again. Oh, I like the conversation about the actress Jodie Campbell's character, but I want to go to the business part. You're on Tubi here in the United States. How was that process of selling this program to different networks? Did you go to different networks, or was this a forbid from different networks, or Tubi just said, hey, we'll take it right now? How was that process of selling it and then getting it to the United States?
Oh, that's a good question. I wish I knew that. I knew that side of the business. Unfortunately, I don't. However, what I do know is that I met the president of Tubi, and he was telling me about what the platform was and the ambitions for the platform and why it was such a good home, which really resonated with me, because he was just talking about what was great about Borders. And I think it was something that, sorry, I can't remember who mentioned it earlier, but everyone has a Jaheim. It's true, as in, like, he said that this show could quite easily be set in Detroit, you know, someone from Detroit going to one of these schools. And I think when he was talking about that and the audiences that Tubi had, it seemed like the perfect home. I don't know the ins and outs of where it was pitched elsewhere. I just know my conversation with Tubi, and so it felt like a perfect home.
Oh, well, that's great. And that you knew that it was a perfect place to put it. And I have Tubi, and I watch some shows on Tubi, and I'm glad it's on Tubi. Thank you very much, Daniel. And again, much success to you for this great program, Borders. Thank you.
Hey, it's Chris again. It's a character that I'm real fascinated about, because there's a scene in there where the headmaster was talking to a parent, Carol. I think that's the character, Carol. And when they were talking, she was talking about the students, and she had a Black Lives Matter sticker on her car while she's saying, watch out for these kids. Like, tell me about that scene right there and why that was shown in there. Because I don't know if a lot of people caught it, but I caught that. I was like, hold up. Tell me a little bit about
that. It's funny. Someone else asked me that same question, and they asked me, it must have taken you so long to come up with that, because he said it was really clever. And what's odd is that I didn't even overthink it, and I think it's because it's true, as in, like, there's so many you know, when the Black Lives Matter movement first kicked off, there was a lot of black squares on all these social media platforms, and there was a lot of people with BLM stickers, but they didn't necessarily mean it. It's just that everyone else had it. Do you know what I mean? And so I think that's kind of what I wanted to show in that, is that in her mind, Black lives do matter. They just don't matter in the spaces where me and my children are, and not if it's going to put me and my children at a disadvantage. So I think that's what I was kind of leaning into, where it's a lot of people who think that they are down for the cause, but in actuality, if it affects them, they're not really. It's a bit like that woman in the park, you know, where she started screaming, calling the police on the guy who was a bird watcher, and then we later found out that she was giving money to the NAACP and all of those kind of things. It sits in that very same vein, where people are, they want progress for Black people, but not when it affects them personally.
I thought it was clever and genius that she done that, and it brought a new twist to the show. So I appreciate that.
Cheers, thank you.
Sorry, Dana again. My question is about writing, the process of writing specifically for teenagers, knowing as an adult how to get out of situations, but having to put yourself in that mindset where they don't know how to navigate. That's the first of time that they're kind of experiencing that. So can you talk about that that process of writing for teens as an adult?
Oh, that's a good question. I suppose it's like I've lived it, and I think all my writers have. So in that sense, but I do know what you mean, as in like, it feels like every year, like teenagers change and they're into something new. So I think a lot of it was research. I interviewed quite a lot of young people as well, who were in boarding school. We also took the scripts to a school as well. Our producer luckily had teenage girls like 15 and 16, which was like the perfect age, and so we took the scripts into the school to kind of talk to them about their experience and how they felt about the script itself, and what was real and what was relevant. So that definitely helped as well. The cast themselves were much younger as well. Surprisingly, they're really young. And in a lot of teenage shows, they're always like mid to like late 30s. But these kids were really, really young. And they were great because they fed a lot into the dialogue as well. So we were quite flexible and loose with the dialogue, providing that what they were hitting dramatic and comic beats. I was quite open for them to change in the dialogue, so it always felt quite real. But yeah.
In one of your earlier statements, you were talking about how we have different shows here, like Bel Air and whatnot, that address these issues. One of the things that has been going on here, though, is there's been a lot of pushback on shows like this where they're thankfully not Bel Air, but other shows have been canceled kind of out of the blue. Any shows dealing with topics like this or that have large Black casts. And I wanted to know if you experienced any sort of pushback in England with this sort of thing, where people are, you know, kind of saying, oh, we don't need to see this. We don't, you know, why are you blaming this? Blah, 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 that sort of thing.
Funny enough, there is one of our like most prominent like Black entertainers, Lenny Henry. He gave a speech not too long ago, probably a few years ago, but he was just talking about how a lot of Black shows never make it past the second series. And so we have felt that. And on my first TV show as well, I definitely felt that, you know, after we did the first series, we were BAFTA nominated. And before we went into the second series, they just didn't quite publicize it as much. And so the numbers were quite low, and gave them an excuse to cut it, even though it was a much better series than the first one. So it is happening quite a lot. In terms of pushback, in terms of subject matter, I've not experienced any for this show. I think it feels like people are making more of a concerted effort to make a change, but I'm still on series 1, so I don't know what the future holds. I like to hope that there's a change. The people that I'm working with have been really, really great and really, really supportive. But I think we'll know. I think we'll know when this gets to series 3 and 4 whether if people were really behind it. And I like to think that we will get that far because, you know, the foundation is really, really strong. You know, we're getting such a great response. The reviews have been great. Everyone loves the performances in the shows. So there's no reason why it shouldn't be on series 3 and 4. If you don't see season 3 and 4, then the answer to your question is it's answered.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much. That was a great answer, and the show is very interesting. So definitely good luck. Good luck with it.
You.
And it's 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Congratulations, Daniel. That's a wonderful, wonderful show, and you can certainly count on us to support it throughout its run. We thank you for your time today, and on behalf of the world's largest group of Black film and TV critics, we thank you for watching this edition of AAFCA Roundtables. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
This is your entertainment ticket. Latest and greatest movie.